The Big 12 is the most entertaining conference in the country. That's not my opinion. That's just a stone cold fact. And the biggest game in the Big 12 this weekend is Oklahoma State at TCU. This is a 3:30 kickoff on ABC. The Big 12's on fire. A documentary could already be done at this point, I think, about the conference this year. These two teams are two of the top 4 highest scoring offenses in FBS. The home team has won and covered the past 4 matchups here. Both of these teams have been on fire, so it's full go. And this is one that everyone should rightly be looking forward to. TCU just went on the road and beat Kansas. Of course, you've seen Oklahoma State and what they've done all year. Both of them still undefeated. And it's going to be really fun because it's yet another top 10 matchup here, yet another matchup of at least 5-0 teams. So like I said in the beginning of the show, we've only had a precious few of these weekends in the history of college football. You can really feel it starting to click with TCU. And I think that really 2 weeks ago against Oklahoma, when they just body bagged the Sooners, you obviously felt that. But then they took it on the road and they followed it up with a win against Kansas. And, I know that there may be some people who look at the last 2 weeks' performances and say, ooh, it kind of makes them do down this week, right? You could say that. You could absolutely, in betting terminology, you could think that way. But here's where I would counter that if I were making the argument for TCU. This Oklahoma State team, they won a game last week against Texas Tech. Their defense was on the field 104 plays. I take those stats very seriously because it doesn't change your outcome last week, but it definitely has an opportunity to be weighted into the following week. So that's the first thing. Would you rather be double due down or would you rather have been on the field 104 plays defensively last week? And the second thing is Max Duggan's playing the best ball we've seen him play at quarterback for TCU, and they have finally, it seems like forever we've been asking, finally weaponized Quentin Johnson. I mean, he had more offensive production last week almost than his entire season so far. That's a Sunday player. That's like a game changer. That's a guy you single-handedly have to account for when you're predicting games. And we hadn't said that about TCU in a little while, but we're saying it again now. I'm seeing a whole lot of folks, by the way, compare that Oklahoma State-Baylor game a couple of weeks ago to this one, Oklahoma State at TCU. And I think it's just out of laziness. True, you have Oklahoma State on the road like they did a couple of weeks ago. True, they're going to play a team in Texas like they did a couple of weeks ago. But if you really want to carry that through, by the way, to the logical conclusion, let's talk it through, shall we? Because a lot of people are saying that in an effort to back Oklahoma State. And I just want to remind you, that game at Baylor, Oklahoma State won it by 9. Baylor outgained them by about 80 yards. They had a better yards per pass. They had better yards per carry. They threw 2 costly interceptions. So again, that doesn't matter as it relates to that game. But if you're trying to use it as kind of a perfect simulation, if you will, of what we're to see in this game, I think it's very short-sighted and pretty lazy and pretty irrelevant. So the scheduling dynamics that day also favored Oklahoma State. That was the game where Oklahoma State was rested and Baylor was coming off that 4-quarter game up in Ames, Iowa. There's nothing about this game that reminds me of Oklahoma State at Baylor. So I'm in a big argument with the model on this game. In fact, we can go ahead and show it if you want to, Colin. So the current Vegas number is TCU minus 3.5, which again is probably for TCU, it's home field and a little bit extra baked in. So odds makers are still telling you we slightly lean TCU neutral field, but the model leans TCU only minus 2. And I got to tell you, I don't do this often, but I disagree. I love the spot here for TCU. Even after the last 2 weeks, I love the spot. I think this is the first time Oklahoma State gets clipped this year, and I'm going to take TCU to win, and I'm going to take them to cover the number. But not a ton of confidence in that. So here's the but. If I'm wrong, I want to remind you guys, as you look at the odds to win the Big 12, by the way, Texas, the odds-on favorite right now to win the Big 12. TCU is second, Oklahoma State's third, Kansas State's fourth. If Oklahoma State does win this, and I picked Baylor a couple of weeks ago, so I was wrong there. If they win, do you know what happens next week? What happens next week if Oklahoma State, well, it's going to happen either way, but if they win next week, or if they win, let me rephrase because that sounds horrible. If Oklahoma State wins this week, they go home and they welcome in the Texas Longhorns to Stillwater. Now, either way, that's going to be an incredible environment, great game. But if they're undefeated and they welcome Texas in there, and let me go ahead and spoil this for you. Texas will be favored up there, and it'll throw everyone sideways because you'll have a 2-loss road team favored over an undefeated home team, top 10 team, whatever. The JP poll will again be validated. If that's the case, you're talking about just a complete and utter circus unfolding in central Oklahoma next week. Very well could have every given Saturday tour implications. Imagine that, an SEC tour like us venturing out to the Big 12. It has happened before. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure and leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.